What's up, boxing fans? This is TBE Boxing, back at you again. Today's topic, too sweet. If the press conference was not staged, Caleb Plant is in trouble for Canelo Alvarez fight. Let's chop it up and see what it's all about.
Got the money for minutes, pretty bitch, gotta show me titties. This is the life that I chose, huh? On the block with the pole, huh? This is the life that I chose, huh? On the block with the pole, huh? That life before riches, huh? That life before riches, huh? Pretty bitch, show me titties, huh? And I got the glazzy run up on me, I'ma make you get it. I'ma make you get it.
Okay, boxing fans, let's chop it up. We're gonna talk some boxing today, so let's talk about this whole Canelo Alvarez Caleb Plant brouhaha that happened at the press conference. So as you are looking at this picture right now on this video, you can see Canelo Alvarez pushing Caleb Plant, okay, while he was facing off at the press conference earlier today. Now, there's a couple of things we're going to have to look at, in terms of this whole situation with Caleb Plant and Canelo Alvarez. First and foremost is the fact that Canelo Alvarez, as you all know, was caught using performance enhancing drugs. Okay, he got caught using PEDs, steroids of some sort, and he was fined. I'm not sure if he was fined, but he was suspended for 6 months because they basically convicted him of using PEDs. Now, that story have kind of been in the background. Nobody, really talks about it much. And Canelo has went on to become, one of the top guys in boxing, even though that's still in the background and there's still a question as to whether or not he's still using PEDs, which more than likely probably still is, because we just saw recently that his fellow stablemate, also tested positive for performance in enhancing substance. Okay, and that's Oscar Valdez that we're talking about. So his stablemate Oscar Valdez also tested positive. So it looks like there's some kind of issue with this whole PEDs in the Canelo camp, and that's an ongoing thing, and it's just been again brought to the front burner by this whole Oscar Valdez situation, as well as the fact that Caleb Plant has taken up the whole situation, and and has basically been speaking on it nonstop ever since they were scheduled to fight, and even before that. So basically, Caleb Plant has been going around talking about this whole Canelo situation with the PEDs because of what happened to Oscar Valdez. And so he's been basically verbalizing about this and putting it on the front burner, so to speak, and in front of everybody. And Canelo doesn't really like that because it's reminding people that he's a PED abuser. Now, like I said, that was kind of in the background until Caleb Plant kind of just brought everything to the forefront and has been constantly harping on it. And so it's always in the media about Canelo using PEDs. And, I think that's gotten Canelo pretty upset because that's that's going straight to his reputation, basically, and it's revealing him as actually what he is and has been, and that's a PED abuser. He's a drug abuser. Okay, so this is the facts. He was suspended for that. So as I'm saying, Canelo doesn't really like what Caleb Plant is doing, and so he's pretty upset. And as you can see, they've been going back and forth in the media. So finally, when they came, face to face, as you look at this picture, you see what's going on. Now, that's a little background on Canelo. Now, in terms of Caleb Plant and this whole situation, I mean, I like the fact that he's doing what he's doing in terms of speaking out on the abusing of steroids by PEDs by the Canelo camp, and not just Canelo himself, but other people in his camp. He has more people in his camp that could possibly be doing the same thing. We don't know, because I think that personally, I would think that Reynoso that they, knows about. It's not like Canelo is out there using PEDs and behind the back of his manager or whatever. I think I would suspect that Eddie Reynoso is an integral part of this whole process of using the PEDs. I would think that he's very much involved in that. Okay, just by his attitude and the way he acts. Okay, I mean, when at the press conference with Caleb Plant, the subject of the PEDs and Canelo's conviction on the PEDs charges were brought up several times, and Eddie Reynoso and Canelo, basically tried to avoid even talk. They ignored it and basically, come up with some kind of a fake anger, like he's angry about something because he claimed that Caleb Plant talked about his mother, but it was, Caleb Plant just called him the M word, and he's talking about Canelo's talking about it, he's talking about Caleb Plant talking about his mother because he called him the M word when it was Canelo who called, not too long ago, as a matter of fact, in one of his press conference, okay, Canelo called somebody the M word, okay? So, I mean, it's not like, the M word gets thrown around all the time, among fighters. So it's not like, Caleb Plant did anything out of the ordinary. I mean, people call other people, MF all the time. And so the fact that Canelo is using that as an excuse for pushing Caleb Plant, just goes to show you that this whole drug situation with the PED thing is really getting to Canelo. And, I'm kind of glad that Caleb Plant, is staying on top of that and, and pressing it and not letting it go. Because a lot of people are, in boxing, are too intimidated by the whole Canelo mystique, so to speak. And they don't really speak about it. And a lot of them run around calling him number one pound for pound, even though they know he's a drug cheat. So I don't really, agree with that. I would, I don't even put him on the pound for pound just because of his history. And then now recently with this whole Oscar Valdez thing, there's no way that he should be in a top 10 pound for pound. But let's get to the meat of this matter. Now, you see on this video I have up here, hands behind his back. Too sweet. Now, one thing you need to know, if somebody is going to cheat like the way you see Canelo on his camp is cheating, then you can't put nothing past them. Okay, they'll do anything. If you have an opponent who you know is a known cheater, okay, that means that they're cheating to win. They want to win at all cost. So a person like that, you have to be very careful of them. They're very dangerous people, okay? Not just Canelo, but the whole camp. Eddie Reynoso, all of them. They're very dangerous people because they will do anything to win, okay? So when I say anything, I mean anything. And, because if you're going to do that to your body with these steroids or these PEDs, just because you want to win so badly, then you'll do anything, basically. I mean, if you could do it to your own body, what would you do to somebody else? So at the end of the day, this fight between Canelo, now a lot of people out here saying that, Canelo, that Caleb Plant has a chance against Canelo. He's going to beat Canelo. He's training with Andre Ward. Andre Ward is giving him pointers, something to that effect. And so, I even heard people talking about Andre Ward is guaranteeing a win. I mean, I'm rocking with Caleb Plant because of his stance on the PED situation in terms of that. But in terms of who's gonna win the fight, I'm leaning towards Canelo. And this is a perfect example of why I'm doing that in this picture right here, where you see Canelo is pushing Caleb Plant. Now, like I said previously, if you're a drug abuser or a PED abuser, a person who will do anything to win a fight, then you can't put nothing past that person. You see what's going on right there with him pushing Caleb Plant. Now, I don't know where Caleb Plant is from, okay, but he's definitely not. I don't know where, but where do they do that at? Where do you approach a person who you're gonna fight, okay, and then you have your hands behind your back and you're right up on the person? You walk right up to the person with your hands behind your back. Now, there's only two reasons why, if you're walking up to someone that you're gonna fight, that you would put your hands behind your back. There can only be two reasons why you would do that. okay? And I wouldn't do it under no circumstances. But let's name those two reasons. One, you're very confident, okay? And so you walk up to somebody with your hands behind your back to display your confidence, right? Now, in that situation, since you're that confident, that means that you must have a plan if the person tries something, okay? So you're gonna walk up to this person, you're gonna say to yourself, well, okay, I'm gonna go up to this guy, and if I'm gonna put my hand behind my back, but just in case he tries something, I'll be ready for him, okay? I'm gonna be on my guard. Caleb Plant walks up to Canelo, and it didn't look like he had any plan or any, it didn't look like he was ready for Canelo, or whatever Canelo might do in that situation. Because with your hands behind your back, you're leaving yourself unprotected, basically. I mean, you're a fighter, and the other guy's a fighter. But you have your hand. Now, what if Canelo had decided to just deliver a left hook or a right hand instead of pushing Caleb Plant, which is entirely possible? Okay, that could have happened just as easy as him pushing Caleb Plant. And it wasn't just an ordinary push, like say, just get out my face, like a little push, just push the guy back. No, he actually pushed Caleb Plant he wanted to push him to the ground. He pushed him very hard. That was a very hard push. And he said, after it, I just pushed him and he tried to punch me. Listen, once you put your hands on somebody, okay, then all bets are off, okay? Now, I'm telling you the truth. If I was Caleb Plant and Canelo did that to me, he pushed me like that hard that I had to go up like about 5 steps backward to avoid falling down. When we got back together, like we just saw them, they got back closer together, and then Caleb Plant tried to slap Canelo with his left hand. I mean, that looked so weak. If that was me, and once Canelo put his hands on me, all bets are off. That means I have the right to retaliate, and my retaliation is going to be above and beyond what happened in the first place. So the only thing I would have done to Canelo at that situation, if we got back within range of each other, I would have either delivered a straight right hand, and I'm going for the knockout right there. I wouldn't, it wouldn't be a slap, or it wouldn't be a push. I'm going straight for the knockout. Okay, I would have delivered a straight right hand, or I would have just kicked him in the balls, or kicked him. I would have kicked the shit out of him. Okay, so that's what I would have done, because that's what the situation calls for. It calls for maximum retaliation. Okay, but unfortunately for Caleb Plant, by presenting himself, with his hand literally behind his back, okay, he wasn't in a position to do anything. And then when he came and actually tried to retaliate, he tried to slap Canelo as if you were slapping a woman, or he's snapping a small kid, or like, I mean, this is Canelo. You're trying to slap Canelo. So I'm not, right there and then I'm thinking to myself, well, what is going through this guy's head? Why would you try to slap a guy like Canelo instead of trying to, give him a left hook or a straight right hand or kick the shit out of him? Why are you slapping? So I just didn't understand that. So if that whole thing wasn't staged, then Caleb Plant is in real trouble in this fight, because I don't think he's mentally there for this fight with Canelo, and physically, I don't know if he's going to be able to even deal with Canelo. And then on top of that, the mentality is just not there. I don't see the mentality that's going to beat Canelo being displayed by, Caleb Plant. I mean, he's saying the right words in terms of the whole PED issue. That's one thing, but we're talking about the fight now, not the PED issue. Because not only are you going up against a guy that's a good fighter in Canelo, a great fighter actually, but he's also abusing steroids, and that means he has an advantage. Okay, so he has a physical advantage in that situation because he's a PED abuser. Okay, so you're going up against a guy like that, and then you're acting like, you're acting too sweet. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just not going to work. I just don't see how this is going to work for Caleb Plant, because that left slap that he tried to slap Canelo looked so weak. And then Canelo, and then he didn't even really connect to Canelo. He barely grazed Canelo's face, okay? and then Canelo moved away and delivered a left. It looked like a left hook or a left uppercut or something that caught Caleb Plant. So even again, so I say, so there it is. You have Caleb Plant presenting himself to Canelo, without like he was just no defense. He just made himself defenseless in front of Canelo. I mean, his hand is behind his back. Look at him. Okay, he almost fell to the ground. Why would you approach a guy that you're gonna fight, with your hands behind your back? I mean, if this was in the streets, okay, I mean, that's the only thing I really can say, because that's what I know. I mean, you approach somebody and y'all gonna fight. You got your team behind you. He got his team behind him, and y'all go up to each other and y'all facing off. You're not gonna be there with your hands behind your back unless you have a gat or two gats behind your back in those hands. Okay, that's not gonna happen, because you already know, that out here in these streets, you can't take any chances. Okay, and with what I'm seeing Caleb Plant doing, it just makes me not too optimistic about his chances in this fight with Canelo, because he looks like he's just not really ready for prime time, because you are approaching a guy who's a known cheater, and you've been talking about this guy nonstop and disrespecting him, and then you're gonna go up to him in his face with your hands behind your back and saying, as if you're saying, "Hey, I'm no threat to you, Canelo," are you just too confident? And then when you was called, when Canelo tested you, you weren't ready to be tested. Okay, so in both scenarios, whether he was overconfident or whether he wasn't confident enough, Caleb Plant, basically failed as far as I can see. And it looks to me like when he goes in that ring against Canelo, the same thing is going to happen in that ring, because Canelo is going to do in that ring. He's going to come in there with the mentality of, win at all costs. Now, whether Caleb Plant has that same mentality, I don't know. He's saying he's going to win. He's talking about winning, but his actions doesn't show the actions of someone that's winning. Okay? Hands behind your back, you in front of Canelo talking shit to him, and you're not in no position to defend yourself. And look what happened. Okay? He looked at Canelo and just punch him in his face. So, all this talk about Canelo, I hear this talk about, oh, Caleb Plant don't respect. Oh, that's all fine, not respecting Canelo. There's nothing wrong with not respecting Canelo. But you gotta have, you have to be in a position to defend yourself. You can't go up in front of Canelo and, disrespecting him and then expect him, not to do anything. Basically giving somebody your neck and don't think they're gonna choke your ass or bite you. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Okay, this is a fight. It's gonna be a fight. Be ready. Don't go up in front of your opponent with your hands behind your back, because you're gonna get what you get. And so that's what happened. Now, and from the Canelo perspective, it's obviously that Caleb Plant is kind of getting under Canelo's skin with this whole PED thing. I don't think Canelo is physically, intimidated by Caleb Plant by any stretch of the imagination. But I think that whole drug issue is really a bad thing for Canelo, and he knows that, from his, from a publicity standpoint as well. And the fact that, Caleb Plant keeps speaking on it is not looking good for Canelo, and he knows it's not looking good for him. And I'm pretty sure that's that's pretty upsetting for him. And then on top of that, at the press conference, the guy that was doing the press conference, he actually repeated some of the charges by, well, it's not really charges, those are facts, because Canelo was suspended for PED abuse. So it's not like, this, but the fact that they announced the guy that was, doing the press conference, the MC, the fact that he actually mentioned and actually asked this question to Canelo and to Eddie Reynoso, he directed these questions, and accusations to Eddie Reynoso and Canelo, which they avoided, answering, was pretty, that was pretty good. I didn't expect him to do that. I would think that they would tiptoe around the whole thing. I would even mention it, but they mentioned it, so it is what it is. But again, now in terms of this fight, I've seen Caleb Plant fight, a couple of times, and I mean, a lot of people talk about how good he is, and he's pretty good. I mean, he's a boxer, okay, and I like boxers. I'm always when we talk about boxing and brawling or boxing and punching, usually I go for the boxer. I mean, the thing it is called boxing. So anyway, I've seen Caleb Plant fight a couple of times, and I'm not really that impressed with his abilities as a fighter. I mean, he's a pretty good boxer. To me, he's more like a methodical. He's a methodical boxer, meaning that he does everything methodically. Okay, it's not like he goes out there and he's just doing his thing off the fly, but he's like a methodical person. He does everything methodically. And nothing's wrong with that. But to me, it seemed a little not as fast as he could be. His foot movement is okay, but it's not the best in the world. It's pretty good. I'll give him that. But it's not the best. It's not that good. Okay. And hand speed, okay. Most of the time when he's fighting, he doesn't really get pressed like that. Most of the people that don't, you really keep everybody at range. So they never really get into press him. He's usually fighting at his own pace, basically. And I watched him a couple of times, and it looks to me like he has some issue with conditioning. I think he gets a bit tired too fast in there, to me, But he's pretty good as a boxer. But is he at the level of Canelo? I don't know, and I don't really think so. But we're going to see, okay? We're going to see how good he really is. I don't think he has really been tested yet. And this is going to definitely be a test for him. Now, a lot of people talk about fighting Canelo, but when they get in their ring and that first punch land, like what happened, with Canelo's last fight, when the first punch lands, people really, they get back to reality really fast because Canelo punches hard, and then when they feel those punches, like they say, everybody got a plan until the first punch lands, and then all these plans goes out the window, and it's all survival mode from there on. Which is what happened to most of Canelo's opponents of late, okay? So, in his fight against Billy Joe Saunders, we saw that whole scenario played out, okay? So, I just don't think that Caleb Plant, I mean, I could be wrong, and we're going to find out soon, but I just don't think that he has the skills to really beat the Canelo, okay? Because, I mean, his defense is okay, but again, he doesn't look, he keeps his hand low, his left hand low, and, he sticks his head out sometimes, like head forward, with his hands down, okay, which is good for fighting against guys who you can, slip them. But when you're going against a guy that knows what he's doing in there, that could be a detriment, okay? And so I'm not really that much of a fan of the Caleb Plant style of boxing. He keeps his feet really wide apart. He does do pretty good foot movement. Like I said, it's not the best, but it's not the worst. It's pretty good. He does have a decent jab, and he does use the jab as he should, and so it's good fundamentals. But again, when you press him out, you try to punch him. He kind of hide behind his shoulder, like he doesn't keep his hand up to block the punches. He uses the shoulder almost like a variation of the shoulder roll, but without the right hand up like the way Mayweather does it. He doesn't do it as good as Mayweather, but he does do some type of variation of this shoulder roll, and the way he does it, he shifts his body, to his right, and hides behind the shoulder, and then he moves his feet to, it's pretty good actually what he actually does when he does that. But again, I don't think that's going to be that effective against somebody that knows what they're doing in there. And I think he could leave himself exposed, just by the way he fights. He doesn't really do a lot of head movement, and his head is right there for you. And he's, like a lot of times when he's punching, he's wide open. So if you're punching somebody that's a kind of puncher that can, punch between your punches, then you're going to be in trouble. And I think he's going to be in trouble against Canelo just for that reason alone. But again, I could be, overanalyzing, and he could be a lot better than I actually think he is. But I just don't see it. I'm sorry. So in this situation, I don't have much of any, of an optimistic outlook as to his chances against a guy like Canelo. I think that Canelo is probably going to stop him. And that's what I see with this Caleb Plant fight. But again, I'm with Caleb Plant with his whole, campaign against drug abusing and boxing, because I think he's right on point with that. Okay, and I support him 101% with that. Keep speaking about this whole thing. Keep speaking on it. Use your platform to talk about it, because it's very important, and he's doing a real important service by speaking up against this whole Canelo and his whole his camp and the whole PED abuse that they've been doing now for years and getting away with it. Okay, so kudos to Caleb Plant for speaking about this. However, speaking about the PED issue and actually beating Canelo is two different things. And he's winning when it comes to the drug issue against Canelo, but I don't know if that's going to translate into him winning in the fight in the ring against Canelo. And at this point, I would have to lean towards Canelo, because I haven't seen anything from Caleb Plant that will convince me that he can actually beat Canelo. Okay, he hasn't fought the kind of caliber opponents that that would prepare him for Canelo. And after watching him fight several times, I don't really see much there that I think could give Canelo that much trouble. Okay, it's not like he's a Mayweather type of boxer. He nowhere, not even close. So and not even as fast as Mayweather, but he is bigger than Mayweather and bigger than Canelo, so that might have some effect. But again, I've seen Canelo fight bigger guys. The size don't really matter unless you know how to use it. And I'm not sure, if Caleb Plant is really ready to face a guy of the caliber of Canelo, especially when Canelo has the advantage because he has been a serial abuser of PEDs, and he could be on PEDs now, and so he would definitely have the advantage against Caleb just for that alone. Not to mention his skills, because Canelo is not a PED user who's don't know how to fight. He's a skilled fighter who uses PEDs, so that's even more dangerous than a guy who's mediocre and is using PEDs to get an advantage. Canelo is already a great fighter, but then he's using the PEDs to give him even more of an advantage. So, that's what he got convicted for using PEDs. And so, yeah, that's basically what it comes down to. So, again, kudos to Caleb Plant for bringing up the whole PED thing and, staying on top of that and not getting intimidated by anybody and keep speaking on it. But I don't have, I'm not very optimistic about his chance against Canelo. Hopefully he could, maybe he might surprise me. Okay, and if he did win against Canelo, that would be a pleasant surprise. But I wouldn't bet on it. Okay, and so that's what I see about this whole thing. But again, we're gonna find out soon enough, and so we'll see when the fight actually comes around, which is in a minute now. So anyway, I'm gonna leave it there for now. This is TBE Boxing saying, make sure you go and subscribe to the channel, teboxing.com. I also have a podcast channel, podcast.tbeboxing.com. Make sure you like that as well. Go to the channel, check out the latest podcast. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, okay? And that's all I have for you right now. So I'll see you on the next one. This is TBE Boxing. I'm out.